Hello, and welcome to our East Bay Stonewall Democratic Club virtual endorsement meeting for the Assembly District 18 special election. My name is Joe Greaves, and I'm the East Bay Stonewall Political Action Committee Chair. Please note that Stonewall will be holding an endorsement vote for 8018 on Tuesday, August 3rd from 5 to 8 p.m. Current members can vote through the club's website on our member portal. Again, that is Tuesday, August 3rd from 5 to 8 p.m. through the club's website. Today, we are really pleased to welcome Mia Bonta, the top finisher in the primary election for this interview, which was recorded on July 27th at 5:07 p.m. Mia, welcome. Let's jump in. As you know, East Bay Stonewall is the longest serving LGBTQ plus advocacy organization in the East Bay. What's the one thing you want our community to know about you, Mia Bonta, as a candidate for 8018? What distinguishes you from your opponent?
Thanks, East Bay Stonewall Democratic Club, for holding this opportunity to just have everybody get involved in this special election. It's an incredibly short race. I'm hoping that East Bay Stonewall Democratic Club and this community will remember that I have been proudly a part of the East Bay Stonewall Democratic Club over the years as a Democrat, and have prioritized doing so because I think it's very important that we as allies ensure that the LGBTQ community has a voice that can consistently be uplifted and be attended to. Right now in the California State Legislature, and in this district in particular, where I would be representing Oakland, Alameda, and San Leandro, we need to ensure that we have allies in the legislature who will be able to support those issues that are important to the LGBTQ community, support issues that are important to us as Democrats and as progressives. And I'm hoping to be an ally for you in that capacity right now, as I have been over the last 25 years, supporting youth and families in our Bay Area.
That's great. And I'm going to turn it over to my colleague Shane, who's also on the East Bay Stonewall board. And Shane, do you want to introduce yourself and take the next question?
Absolutely. Thank you, Joe. I'm Shane. I use pronouns he, her, they. I'm an East Bay Stonewall Democratic Club board member as well. I'm located in Berkeley, California, but care about this greatly. And so the question I want to lead with is, so trans and gender non-conforming folks continue to face increasing violence, harassment, and political attacks. What more should the legislature be doing to protect and support our trans siblings? And what specific actions will you take if you are elected?
Thanks for that question. I also get to serve as the Alameda Unified School District School Board President right now, and I've been thankful in that capacity to really think about the way in which schools and school districts operate to support our LGBTQ community, particularly our trans community. And it's been something that I've been very proud of, to see the city of Alameda that is, has definitely expressed different levels of bias against trans and the LGBTQ community over the years, really start to be a city that can proudly be someone who could be a city that's supportive of the trans community, and a school district that is supportive and embraces the trans community. I think the role of the California State Legislature right now, particularly as we look to ensure that our trans community has the same protections and rights in their gender identity, to really focus in on what I call is like a complete overhaul of so much legislation that didn't contemplate the realities of transgender individuals and many LGBTQ communities, gender nonconforming individuals as well. And it's time that we make sure that our laws represent our community in all that they are. I think it's going to be work that will take years for there to be a true representation and protection of the transgender community in our laws. And I've been happy to see the advancements that have been made in some of the legislation that has been put forward by Assembly Member Scott Wiener, for instance. But there's so much to do. When I look at the full package of legislation and that we have in the legislature. It like literally needs a combing through and a very deliberate a way to make sure that we're um, updating legislation so that transgender community is fully represented, fully protected, and fully known to have their rights protected in our legislation. And my intention would be to work with other legislators and to work with the LGBTQ community, to work with the trans community, to ensure that that's done in a very deliberate and thoughtful and urgent and with urgency.
That's really great to hear. Thank you. So LGBTQ youth are at higher risk of homelessness and food insecurity. How will you address these issues in our community and support LGBTQ plus youth who are unhoused and having a stable and thriving future?
Absolutely. Also at higher risk, obviously, of depression, higher risk of suicide, and this is an area where I have had over time the ability to be able to work with several LGBTQ youth who have experienced homelessness, who have experienced displacement, and as a result, food insecurity. I think a lot of what needs to happen is for us to ensure that when we're providing supports and services, whether it be mental health supports, whether it be food justice programs, whether it be housing supports, that we are particularly providing additional resources that are culturally competent for LGBTQ youth, that are provided by other LGBTQ youth and families and people, so that and that are provided by allies who have done their work. I think one of the things that we need to do is ensure that we, as allies, have additional training to be able to really provide culturally competent supports, because I don't think that that's the case right now. We need to ensure that LGBTQ youth have the ability to have additional family supports and protections so that when they're facing situations where they are not accepted by their family, they have easier off ramps into communities of support, so that they don't end up in a situation where what they need to turn to is living on the streets or couch surfing or with others, as opposed to safe safe homes of support, to be able to ensure that they don't have to have the incidents of fully representing and fully being in their identity, be impacted by these other ancillary issues of homelessness and food insecurity that come along with them. I think one of the biggest things that we need to do in the California State Legislature right now, particularly during COVID, and as we're facing these kinds of pandemics, is to ensure that we're actually putting resources in the hands of frontline trusted messenger programs and nonprofits, community-based organizations, and building up the infrastructure for CBOs and others to actually be able to provide just-in-time, differentiated supports for LGBTQ youth, so that it doesn't come to a point where they have to be homeless, where they have to face food insecurity at the rates that they do, because they're entering into spaces that don't recognize or fully engage all of who they are.
Wonderful, thank you. For the next question, there are two bills currently pending in the Assembly. SB 9, which would require a municipality to treat a proposed housing development containing no more than 2 residential units as single-family residential housing, and SB 10, which would permit a municipality to authorize developments up to 10 units or less in areas zoned for single-family housing. What is your position on these bills? If you support them, why is this the right approach? If you oppose, what is the right approach to increase accessibility and affordability of housing?
9 and SB 10, along with the ancillary bills like SB 6, are absolutely critical when we think about the kind of housing production and affordable housing that we need to be able to ensure that people stop getting displaced. As we talked about earlier, LGBTQ community in particular is one of the larger communities that have been displaced. Are some of the largest representatives of people who are also renting their homes. So my position on SB 9 and SB 10 comes from a couple of realities in my life. One is that I moved 13 times in 16 years and have the recognition of what it means to have that kind of housing instability and housing insecurity. I am somebody who also grew up food insecure at different points as someone who experienced poverty. And I have been a renter for had been a renter for 30 years, and I wasn't the kind of renter who had a lot of choice in the reality that I was a renter. I was a renter who had to deal with the reality that if a landlord decided to increase their rent by 10-15% without the kinds of tenant protections in place that we deserve, it meant that my mother and I would need to find another place to live. And several of the times that we moved were because of instances like that. So my approach to SB 9 and SB 10 is to recognize that we have a housing crisis, that we need to have affordable housing in place in order to be able to do that, and we need to ensure that we have tenant protections. In this district, AB 18, that represents one of the larger cities, Oakland, and that has small cities who are not doing their fair share right now. SB 9 and SB 10 are critical um, in the um, in the desire to ensure that we're building up housing production, that we're ensuring that that housing production is happening in a way that preserves, that is a step towards preserving our climate, and that takes full steps in terms of climate action, and that fully recognizes the inherent racism and bias that was built into many of the housing policies that we've had in place as we supported single family zoning. On SB 9 and SB 10, though, I do think it's absolutely critical that the representative in this district hold a very strong line to ensure that any housing policy that moves forward has first and foremost at the center housing affordability as an issue and as a concern, and tenants' rights and tenants' protections. Right now, as those bills are laid out, they do not, in my opinion, have the strength of explicit housing affordability laid out in them as they should, nor do they explicitly name the requirement that there be tenant protections to ensure that when those houses are built, they're houses that people can afford to live in, and that they will be protected in staying in them. So at this point, I am opposed to SB 9 and SB 10 without amendment. I have, though, had an opportunity to be able to talk to many people in the housing production, with housing production focus, a part of YIMBY Action, and people on the tenant side. I've been a part of thankful to have received the endorsement of the California Renters Council. And I do believe that with work, we can make SB 9 and SB 10, which are so critical, really have the housing affordability components and the tenant protection components that we need to make them bills that I will fully know that we absolutely need to support.
Thank you. Can you tell us a little bit about your campaign, endorsements, grassroots activity, fundraising? How's your campaign going?
Absolutely. It's a sprint of a campaign. I am thankful to have received the endorsement of Congresswoman Barbara Lee, who doesn't endorse very often. I think there hasn't been an African American woman. As a Black Latina, I take on the responsibility and the knowing of the fact that she 20 years ago was the last Black person, a woman, to represent the Northern California, and I'm thankful for that endorsement. I'm thankful to have the endorsement of over 25 legislators in the California State Legislature. I think that's important because it shows that people in the legislature who know the job believe that I would be a good colleague, and kind of gives me an opportunity to hit the ground running in the California State Legislature. I'm proud to have the endorsement of Equality California, the lead council, the CLCV, and BWAPA as some of the main endorsements that I have, as well as having the majority of labor aligned behind my race, which is humbling because it means that I have working people, teachers, nurses, firefighters, maintenance workers, carpenters, really supporting and believing in public sector workers, believing in my candidacy, and that I will be the legislator that will be able to support this district and working families and working people. Um, I've been able to do the work that you need to do in a campaign, which is raise money. Campaigns are incredibly expensive. And until we change our campaign financing laws, I've been proactively doing what I need to do to ensure that we have the ability to run a campaign that gets the word out in a special election, that there's a campaign happening, which people don't know about. And I'm thankful to be able to have an infrastructure and a campaign of, of, of people, paid staff and others who are largely represented by LGBTQ community members. We are out hitting the pavement, walking, talking, and texting to let people know that there's a special election happening, and sharing my time as a 25-year nonprofit executive in the Bay Area, working for children and families and youth in our area, and spreading the word about the campaign. I encourage any member of the East Bay Stonewall community to club to join the campaign, and thank you all for taking this time to be able to learn more about me.
Wonderful, thank you. Is there anything else that you would like to share with the Stonewall members as we wrap up this interview?
I think Stonewall, one of the things that has been so incredibly powerful in the club for so long is that you have really been able to put front and center the needs and the issues and policies that concern the LGBTQ community. I know that part of what you all think about is whether or not you can have representatives in the California State Legislature. I'm fully aware that the opponent that I have in this campaign is an LGBTQ member. I want to share that I have been an ally, and I fully believe that allyship is a critical piece of this. So I recognize the need to be able to support LGBTQ electeds, and have been thankful that I've been able to be very deliberate about supporting LGBTQ community members to become electeds, and has been something that every door I've walked through, I've looked to make sure that we've had an opportunity to bring other electeds who are a part of the LGBTQ community into that. I do that because I want to make sure that my two children, one who is questioning, one who is bisexual, has the ability to know that there are representatives who are a part of the LGBTQ community that are fighting for them, and fighting for their ability to grow up as strong youth who are full in their identity and who they are, and that their mother is somebody who loves them dearly and loves who they are, and knows that one of the things that we need to do is ensure that there's political power to be able to ensure that LGBTQ issues are fully addressed. And I know that involves not just sexual identity, not just gender identity, but it involves all of the issues that we talked about: housing, criminal justice reform, race and ethnicity, and racial justice issues. And I'm thankful to be somebody who has the experience right now, day one, to be able to go into the California State Legislature and represent the ADA team strongly, with pride and with efficiency and skill, and with relationships to build on, to be able to ensure that the things that you care about deeply are things that I will have the capacity to be able to work on and make sure get done as solutions for our community.
Great. Thank you so much, Mia, for your time and for your candor today. And we wish you the best of luck on your campaign. And we certainly look forward to working with our next assembly person, whoever that may be, to fight for all of those issues and to fight for our community and for our allies. So thank you for your time. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Bye.
Thank you.